Greece, let's talk to Tobias Blattner. He's a former ECB economist in Frankfurt, and he's now a European economist at Daiwa Capital Markets. Welcome to Countdown. Let me ask you first. Moody's saying it's a 50-50 risk that Greece will default. What do you reckon?
I think certainly markets have come to the conclusion already that a debt restructuring is inevitable. I think what is more worrisome is right now is the political quarrel that we see among EU leaders in this period. And I think the whole crisis has been handled pretty wrong from the beginning. And this is what we see now is most people are now finger pointing at the ECB, saying that they are pretty inflexible in the way that they're handling the crisis right now. But I think one thing is overlooked here is that the ECB...
Just because basically the ECB is saying they don't want a reprofiling, but where do you stand on, some people say, look, sure, we need a reprofiling at some point, but let's just wait until 2013, because at the time we're going to have some mechanism in place, the ESM, to make it a lot less painful. Others are saying we have to do it now, because 2 years down the line, it's going to cost a lot more money.
That is true, exactly. Economically, it would make more sense to do it now, just because at the moment what you're doing is you're throwing good money after bad money. And so, of course, economically, it makes a lot of sense now. It is just a little bit our credibility of the politicians, about the credibility of the ECB. So what they have been saying, of course, is before 2013, there will be no private involvement in the debt restructuring. So, of course, if they would do it now, then they would lose their face.
But there is that standoff between the politicians and on one side and the ECB on the other. How do you see the ECB's role in this crisis, former economist?
I think the ECB's position is completely comprehensible, because what is actually at stake is the ECB's reputation, credibility and independence. So you have to see, basically, last May they have been forced, they hardly had a choice than to actually enter into markets, buy these bonds and stabilize markets. And now, 1 year later, and probably some 40-50 billion years later, the same politicians drive them into another awkward situation in which they eventually have to accept some haircuts on these bonds. And this is equivalent to monetizing public debt, because at the end of the day, you use ECB money and then you don't receive that full amount of money back. That is monetizing public debt. And that is, of course, very, very bad for the ECB's credibility and reputation.
Tobias, exactly what options do we have left now? Because we're talking about either extending the maturities for bondholders or debt rollovers. Now, there is one that actually everyone prefers, because otherwise they would have much more difficulty accessing money from the ECB.
Right, exactly. So the ECB, I think, is probably happy if there's some kind of voluntary debt rollover. So that would not constitute a default in the pure sense of a default. So in that case, I think this is probably what we can expect to see, is some kind of second bailout package that is due within the next couple of days and weeks, probably.
Yeah, but is it likely that that extra tranche will actually be given? Is that a certainty? It's far from it, isn't it?
It's far from being a certainty, but I think nobody has an interest in letting Greece down now at that moment. So they need a second bailout package. The problem was, of course, in the first bailout package, that everybody was assuming that in 2012 they could come back to financial markets and tap financial markets, but this is, of course, looking at yields now, completely impossible.
But Tobias, why do we not decide that actually Greece can exit the Eurozone for a short while, get its finances back in order, devalue its currency, and then come back in?
Because I think if you would engage into a good cost and benefit analysis of leaving the euro area or not leaving the euro area, you would pretty sure come to the conclusion that leaving the euro area is a bigger pain for Greece and probably also for the other euro area member states than staying within the euro area.
Now, can I just ask you finally to wrap this up? We are talking about interest rates as well. We've got Trichet talking. Maybe after June a decision will be made. Is his focus on the periphery or on the core?
They really take an aggregate view. So what really matters is basically what is the euro area aggregate in terms of growth, in terms of inflation.
And what's your prediction that will happen?
Well, I guess most likely he will use the word strong vigilance next week, and that will...
So no change?
There will no change next week, but probably a change in July.
OK. Tobias,
thank you very much.
Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.